folks. My name's Todd Jimenez. I am the lead CDN engineer for Ticketmaster, and assuming my laptop actually powers on, come on. This is an inauspicious start. What is going on here? All right, so here is what I am going to go ahead and do, because this is always fun. The demo gods have not blessed me here. So I'm going to go ahead and talk you through some of our components, and we'll see if we can actually get something going. Come on. Apologize, folks. Shit.
It's okay. What's more fun than live?
It's, yeah, my computer's not actually booting. Do I actually have power? There we go. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop shoe while my computer's booting up, and we're going to go ahead and go from there. So today I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about magic tricks with Docker, or how to monitor Fastly in about 5 minutes. Yeah, magic tricks. Who are you expecting magic tricks on the Fastly stage? So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the needs that we have for Ticketmaster. So we're a fairly small team managing the Fastly relationship and the accounts, and we need to be able to look from sort of the top down. So frequently when you have people who are looking at services, you're seeing components like they're interested in 1 services, 20 services, 100 services. Perhaps they're all self-similar. They're all run by the same development teams. This is fantastic. Hopefully that's the only glitch that we actually run into here. And we have a slightly different need set in that we need to look at the account in aggregate, in its entirety. So from that perspective, I'm going to go ahead and lay out kind of our need sets and how we're looking to do this. So if you bear with me for one further second, there we go. Okay. All right. Now we're cooking with fire. Okay. All right. Again, as mentioned, I'm Todd Jimenez from Ticketmaster. Here's my GitHub link here. That's going to become slightly more relevant as we continue the talk. All right. So here's the agenda we're going to run through. I wasn't kidding about magic tricks. So we're going to go ahead and see if perhaps we can impress some of the folks here, or allow y'all to be your own magician and go out and impress people as you go back to your various organizations. All right. So let's go ahead and talk alerting. So I was sort of highlighting our environment. So at Ticketmaster, we've got hundreds of services, and they're not particularly self-similar. So we have pretty much a pretty decent surface area to deal with. We've got zillions of development teams, and we've got a traffic flow that resembles an erratic DDoS attack. It looks like a hockey stick. That is, when you come to buy tickets, we're like, hey, come DDoS us. That is exactly what it looks like. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about our needs. So from this perspective, because we're looking at the account level as opposed to the service owner perspective, and I'll go into that in a second. Also, we want to go ahead and minimize our mean time to resolution, because everybody wants problems fixed faster. We want to minimize our alerts, because there's alerting exhaustion. And then obviously you want to go ahead and do some third-party integration, because if you're generating alerts, you want them to go somewhere. All right, so from the account owner versus service owner perspective, kind of as I highlighted, frequently when you have 1 service, 20 services, 100 services, perhaps they're fairly similar. You can tune really closely for those services. You can be like, I'm going to adjust my threshold slightly here and slightly here. You have some implicit knowledge of which of those services is important, which of those services is less important, et cetera. Now, the problem, especially when you're dealing with hundreds of services, is we have to approach this from essentially a zero-knowledge perspective. We need something that's probably going to scale pretty well, tell us what is important to our account at any given point in time. Now, we're also a global company. So what is important at any given point in time is going to change. It may change on time of day, it may change on geographic location, it may change. All of these are going to vary. So we need to go ahead and figure out a way to go ahead and do that. Now, additionally, we want to go ahead and minimize our mean time to resolution. What is the overall health, not just of a service, of multiple services? What is the overall health of your Fastly account? And I don't mean Fastly in general, I mean your utilization profile for Fastly. So really simply, how many times has someone come to you with a straight face and gone, so, how's Fastly doing? And you're like, oh, shit. And you're like, I'm going to go check my alerts, I'm going to check my logs, and I'm going to check all of this. And it's, how do you have a good comprehensive answer to that? Now, the second piece is because we have a ton of different development teams that we're supporting, we want to be able to catch gaps for our internal customers. Whatever it happens, we want to make sure that there are as many safety nets as possible for anything that they may not be catching, especially if it's flaring up as being important for our account. All right, so when we start talking about minimizing alerts, we're like, okay, so let's establish some foundational criteria. So the simplest one here is we're going to establish a requirement for a notice. We're going to say, hey, real simple, needs to be doing a consistent more than one request per second. It's really basic. But it helps you weed out those things where, like, you've got that dev service, and it's 100% 5xx's for its 2 requests an hour. Who cares? No one needs to be alerted, paged, et cetera for that. Now, obviously, that's a very low bar. So moving forward from that, we've got minimum requirements for warning. So we say, hey, is this component serving more than 1% of the overall request rate? Is this service serving more than 1% of our overall request rate? Is this data center? Is this origin? Ooh, origins. We'll come back to that. All right. So additionally, so to minimize alerts, dealing with flapping and hysteresis. So hysteresis basically says that the current state is dependent on the previous state. And it's not a great definition. But in this case, basically what we're doing is we're making it harder to clear and flap once an alert triggers. So in the example that we have presented here, basically we're saying for data centers, for 5xx error ratio, we will alarm at 5%. Okay, so far so good. But frequently you'll have sort of that sine wave. It'll go a little over, a little under, a little over, a little under, and you get a ton of alarms out of it. So what we're doing here is we're saying once we are alarming, once we're in an alarming state, we're actually going to make the clearing criteria more stringent. So in this example, we're going from the initial 5%. It needs to go below 3.75% in order to clear. And that helps minimize some of the alerts that we have coming through. Now, similarly, we actually implement a hold-down timer for recovery. So we're using Prometheus on the back end. And when you're dealing with Prometheus, they have a concept of for. When a condition has been met for a certain amount of time, an alert is triggered. It won't be triggered until the for is actually has gone down this thing. The problem is there's no equivalent for recovery. So you could be like, for 10 minutes. All right, 10 minutes, it alarms. Minute 11, it clears. You get a recovery alert. Minute 12, it starts that for timer again. You tend to get a lot of flaps that way. So in this example, what we're actually doing is we're saying, hey, when an event has persisted for 10 minutes, we're going to go ahead and hold it down for 30. We will not allow it to recover for 30 minutes. And the effect of that is here. So in the green, we have the traditional for. And in the blue, we have the hold down timer. So what you're actually seeing here is the volume of alerts from the exact same criteria. It's just simply one is using for and one is using hold down. So the net result is that the blue line is way lower, and so you're effectively getting fewer alarms, especially fewer sort of flapping alarms. All right. So none of this is a great magic trick, right? We're just sort of talking about, we're showing you some graphs, showing you some ideas. So is this a magic trick? How do we make a magic trick? All right. So magic is taking ordinary items and doing something extraordinary with them. OK. So when people are presenting the various graphs and components here, there's sort of a couple of buckets you'll have presentations come in. So some of them are going to be, and all of them are valid and useful. This is not casting shade. Some of them are going to be, here are some cool ideas. And you can see people writing down in their notepad, and they're like, give to engineering team, maybe in 6 months, something interesting comes out. OK, cool. In the second bucket, you're going to have, cool, they've done a code release. Give to engineer. Maybe in a month, he'll have something useful for us. OK, cool. Now, my personal preference is maybe you take what I show you and you go run it during break at altitude. Is that a decent trick? All right. It will be if it actually works. OK, all right. So right now, I'm going to show you the entirety of the trick. This is 100% of the configuration, right? You need a working Docker environment, but that's well outside the scope of my talk. But as long as you got Docker, or this actually even works under containerd, this is the whole trick. This is the whole trick right here. So this is similar to when the magician takes the rings and passes them out to the audience, or takes the sealed deck of cards and asks if they can check if they've been tampered with. I'm showing you the whole trick right here. So now let's do the trick. All right. So there's a couple components you're going to go ahead and need here. So you're going to need a fast API token. No, I'm not going to show you mine. But if you're in this room, you can either get one or ask someone to get one for you. Ideally, you want to have a Slack webhook and channel. Now, technically speaking, this is actually optional. The entire demo will actually work without it. Obviously, you're not going to get anything in Slack. And then finally, you're going to need an ordinary Git repository. Yes. Come on. There we go. You're going to need an ordinary Git repository. So let's actually do that. Come on, mouse. Don't be a pain. OK. All right. So and here, I'm going to go ahead and show you that I've got nothing up my sleeve. And let me go ahead and do this. So we're going to do Docker system prune. So what we're actually doing here is I'm actually nuking all of my pre-existing Docker images, containers, everything else. And the reason that we're doing this is that we're showing you there's almost no tricks to this. Almost. So we're going to go ahead and do Docker volume prune. It would help if I could actually type. It's the joys of doing a live demo. I appreciate y'all bearing along with me. OK. All right. So I have nothing up my other sleeve. And I, of course, with the joys of a live demo, I did this slightly. No, that's correct. OK. All right. So I've cleaned out all my pre-existing Docker information. This is like ideally what it would be like if you actually go ahead and run this on your system. There is nothing No sketchiness going on, except for the sketchiness that is going on. So it is, a magician never reveals all of their secrets. So in this case, what we're actually going to be showing you is an anonymized slice of live Ticketmaster production traffic. However, it is anonymized, it is a slice, it is a grain of sand from the beach. You're not going to be able to infer the overall usage patterns or anything else from Ticketmaster from this. We'll go ahead and run that real quick. All right, and then we will say some magic words. Okay. All right, now it's not going to be real particularly exciting to actually watch this go through, so I figure we go ahead and talk about some other components while we're waiting. But you should be able to tell that what we have going on here is it's actually loading up. So let's talk for a second about old tricks. So this is actually based off of, it's an extension of a talk that I did at Fastly Altitude 2020 virtually. It's Mr. NetOps Fastly dashboards, where basically I took a Docker Compose setup that instantiated Peter Borgen's fantastic Fastly exporter, which reads from the real-time data spigot at Fastly. I took Prometheus, Grafana, and I built a ton of custom Fastly dashboards. So I figure we'll go ahead and show you those real quick while we're waiting for the data to come. So there's a Fastly service dashboard, ton of slicing and dicing. There's a whole talk about these, so we're actually going to go through these pretty quickly. There's a Fastly top services dashboard, which is fantastic when you're looking at your account perspective because you want to know, hey, which services have my top requests, have my top error rates, have my top the rest of it. Fastly is really good at the service level, but the visibility at the account level is a little more limited. And this is our attempt to go ahead and attempt to increase that. And then we have Fastly top data centers dashboard. Okay, so things have been running along. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we've actually got here. So this is a Grafana instance that's actually running directly off of my laptop live. So let's go ahead and see how we're actually doing for data. This is always a little hairy, so we're starting to get a little data. We'll give it just a second. There we go. Now, obviously, you see I've anonymized the names. I can't tell you the names of what we've got, et cetera. But you see that we're starting to get real, actual live production traffic flowing through here. So if we actually go back to the home page here, we've got links to our other components. So let's actually go ahead and look at Prometheus. Now, in this case, Prometheus, we want to go ahead and look at alerts. Now, this here is, so we're alerting for origins. We're alerting for the overall account. Now, this is the alerts for Ticketmaster's overall account utilization for Fastly. Now, again, this is anonymized and whatnot, but this is starting to answer the question when someone comes to you and says, hey, how is Fastly doing? This is the answer. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what those alerts actually look like. In this case, we've wired them up to Slack, and you'll see what we had here are a number of anonymized alerts that have started firing. I've actually got a demo alert in here. Plus, we get some of these. Now, these are fantastic because these will let you get alerting on when a criteria for a data center, for an origin, for your account is interesting based on the criteria we previously described. So, for instance, things aren't always going to be interesting, but while they're interesting, while they're important to your account, they're being surfaced here. So the other component we're going to go ahead and walk through, and I realize we're running a little late, so you see in the Slack, is we talked about Origin Inspector. So one of the dashboards that we actually added, apologies. We'll go home. So one of the dashboards that we actually added in this case is a dashboard specifically for Fastly Top origins. So in addition to the top data centers and top services dashboards that we had previously produced, in this case, this will give you some insight into, hey, which one of your origins are your top consumer requests, or top producer of bandwidth, or top which one's erroring. We also include components like, okay, so what's floating the top in terms of P99 for latency, right? So the key takeaways that I want to go ahead and leave y'all with is you can run this. Anyone here can run this. Ideally, it should be trivially runnable. Now, if you're a smaller organization, maybe this shows you how all of these pieces are glued together, and you have a working model that you can use to demonstrate. If you have questions, how does this work? Why does it work? It's all there. You can give me shit about my ugly code later. If you're a larger organization, perhaps you're going to be interested in some of the decisions we had around thresholds, or how we're doing hold down timers, or how we're attempting to isolate not just important traffic, but important traffic at specific time periods. But the key takeaway here is any one of you can go out and run this over break. So, thank you very much for your time.